Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Carl with Active English. Today I wanted to talk about how to make longer sentences, more advanced sentences, more beautiful sentences. So when you study a language, right, you always learn short sentences first, right? I have a friend, period. She lives in New York, period, right? She is an artist, period, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but it sounds kind of choppy, choppy like broken, and it sounds very basic, right? So as you get more advanced in the language, you want to make longer sentences, combining two sentences into one, right? I have a friend who lives in New York, all right? So it's just a nicer way of speaking. It's a little bit more advanced, and we combine these two sentences using adjective clauses. Okay, so today I want to talk about adjective clauses. So today is going to be kind of a deep dive into a little bit more grammar based topic, but it's really useful because it really does help you to sort of elevate your speaking style, your writing style, to incorporate more advanced sentence structures. It just sounds nicer, right? So in this video today, I want to talk about number one, what is an adjective clause? What is its purpose? Okay. And number two, how do we use the adjective clause? And then I just want to give a chance for some practice. Okay. So this is a topic I've covered a lot with my students, and I find it to be really helpful for more intermediate to more advanced students. Okay. So first of all, what is an adjective clause? So adjective. Adjective is descriptive, right? This pillow here is yellow. Okay, I'm wearing a blue sweater. So blue, yellow, we're describing something. So adjective is descriptive. A clause is a sentence fragment. It's part of a sentence. It has a subject and a verb. Sometimes it can stand by itself. That's an independent clause. And sometimes it cannot stand by itself. That's a dependent clause, okay? So an adjective clause, in this case, is a dependent clause, okay? There are three types of dependent clauses that are useful to know. The first one is the adjective clause. I have a friend who lives in New York. I'm describing my friend, so that's adjective clause. You can also have a noun clause, right? I can see that she loves her child. So imagine a woman, a mother just had a baby, and obviously she loves that child very much. So I can see that she loves her child. What can you see? I can see it. I can see that. So you see that she loves her child, that's all acting like a noun, right? It's not describing. If you can replace that clause with the word it, then that is a noun clause. Does that make sense? I can see it, right? I can see that she loves her child. So that's called an object noun clause, okay? There's also adverbial clauses. Adverbs, these describe verbs, okay? I work out at a gym. Workout, exercise. I work out at a gym wherever I travel. Do you notice wherever I travel is describing my workout, you see? So it's descriptive, but it's not descriptive of a noun. It's descriptive of a verb. So we call it adverb. Okay, so that's an adverbial clause. So today, let's just focus on the ones in yellow, the adjective clause. That should be enough to keep us busy for this video. All right. So again, you combine smaller sentences into a longer sentence using adjective clause. So let's look at this sentence. I have a friend who lives in New York. Do you see that? So I put in green. Green is the main clause. I have a friend. That's the main idea. Yellow is the adjective clause. It's descriptive. Who lives in New York? I have a friend who lives in New York. So we're combining these two smaller sentences into a longer sentence. We're using an adjective clause. Who, by the way, is called a relative pronoun. Do you know pronoun? Pronoun, for example, instead of saying John, I could say he, right? Or a him or his, right? Those are pronouns, okay? They replace the proper noun. Instead of saying, Jennifer lives in New York, I say she or who. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper into this. Let's talk about adjective clauses with subject relative pronouns. These are the most common, okay? So check out this sentence here. I talked to the woman who works in my office, okay? In the green, I talked to the woman. That's the main clause. Who works in my office? That is the adjective clause. Okay, and we call who, we call that a relative pronoun. Okay, it's a pronoun because I'm not saying her name. I'm not saying Jennifer or Lisa. I'm saying who. All right, so that's a pronoun. It's a subject relative pronoun because in the yellow, in the adjective clause, who functions like a subject, okay? So woman is the object in the main clause, but the woman becomes the subject in the adjective clause. So we call it a subject relative pronoun. And as far as subject-verb agreement, the verb in the adjective clause is going to agree with the relative pronoun. So who works, that's third person singular, right? So it's who works, not who works, okay? So I talked to the woman who works in my office. So we call that an identifying clause or a restrictive clause. It really means the same thing. I prefer to use the terminology of identifying clause because I'm identifying that woman. If I just say I talked to the woman, which woman? The woman who works in my office. Oh, that woman. Okay, thank you so much. You just identified which woman you're talking about. So that's called an identifying or restrictive clause, right? I saw the movie. Which movie? The movie which opens tomorrow. Oh, that movie. You mean Spider-Man, right? So, okay, now I know the identification of that movie. I know the identification of this woman. I talked to the woman who works in my office. You see, the woman who works in my office, that's part of her identity. It's part of who she is. So we're identifying that woman, and we call it an identifying clause. Okay, I talked to the woman who works in my office. All right, you can also have a non-identifying clause. In this case, it's like just adding extra information here. Jennifer, who works in my office, is a friend of mine. So Jennifer is a friend of mine. That's the main clause. And Jennifer, who works in my office, that's a non-identifying clause because Jennifer, that's her name, right? We've already identified her. We already know her identity. Her identity is her name. That's Jennifer, right? So now I'm just giving you a little bit more information. So we call it a non-identifying or non-restrictive clause. It's like, oh, by the way, here's some extra information about Jennifer, whose identity we already know. So Jennifer, comma, who works in my office. Do you notice we use a comma for a non-identifying or non-restrictive clause? There is a comma if you're writing. You kind of hear it when you're speaking to Jennifer, who works in my office, is a friend of mine. It's like parentheses. It's like as an aside, okay? So non-identifying clauses, they don't identify. They just give you extra information about that subject. We do use commas, and also just be careful if you're talking about a thing, we want to use the comma and which, okay? So we don't use that in a non-identifying clause. We don't use the relative pronoun that after a comma. After a comma, we always use which if you're talking about a thing, okay? So, for example, this coffee cup right here, comma, which. You see, this coffee cup right here, I've just identified it. It's very specific. This coffee cup right here, comma, which I bought at Starbucks, you see, comma, which, okay, because I'm talking about a thing, all right? So if it's a thing, we say which. If it's a non-identifying clause, okay? Okay, so those are subject relative pronouns. Let's take just a minute and look at object relative pronouns. These are not quite as common, but they're good to know. So if I have a sentence, where is that person that I should speak to? Question mark. If I'm asking you, so imagine like you tell me like I need to speak to somebody in HR, human resources. So I say, okay, where's that person that I should speak to? Right? Where is that person that I should speak to? That's a question, right? Where is the person, that's the main clause, that I should speak to? I'm talking about the person, so that's an adjective clause. But let's look just in yellow there. Let's break it down. Whom or that, that's the pronoun, I should speak to. What is the subject? What is the subject in that yellow adjective clause? The subject is I, right? I should speak, that's the verb with a modal. I should speak to whom or to that person, right? So I speak to that person. I is the subject, speak is the verb, to that person. That's your object, okay? So we call it an object relative pronoun, all right? Now, we often leave out, or you can say omit. Omit means to leave out. Leave out is the phrasal verb. We often don't include. We leave out the object relative pronoun in conversation. So I could say, where's that person I should speak to, all right? That's very casual. In writing, you might include it. Where's that person that or whom I should speak to? But in casual conversation, you probably just say, where's that person I should speak to? So object relative pronouns, you don't really need to include them in a more casual sense, okay? You could also say, where is the person to whom I should speak, right? Where is the person to whom I should speak. That does sound very formal, and it's not a very common construction. It is correct, but it's not very common. So the pronoun who is used for subjects. The pronoun whom is used for objects. American people almost never use whom, even when it would be appropriate. The only time I think American people use the object pronoun whom is after prepositions like to, with, or for. Like you answer the phone, to whom am I speaking? Or for whom is this gift? It sounds very formal, but it is correct, okay? So getting back to the object relative pronouns and the adjective clauses there, where's that person whom I should speak to, or where's that person that I should speak to? That is correct, but we often leave out or omit the object relative pronoun in casual conversation, even sometimes in writing, okay? But we call it the object relative pronoun because it's functioning like an object in the adjective clause, right? I is the subject, should speak is the verb, and then whom or that's your object in the adjective clause, okay? So I hope that's useful. I would say if you're going to remember like one thing from this video, I would focus on adjective clauses with the subject relative pronouns, right? I talked to the woman who works in my office, right? That's much more common as a construction. And also you do need to include the subject pronoun, the subject relative pronoun. I talked to the woman who works in my office. You cannot leave out that subject relative pronoun. You cannot say, I talked to the woman works in my office. You have to include, I talked to the woman who works in my office. Let's talk about relative pronouns for a minute here. If you're talking about a place, you want to use the relative pronoun where, right? That was the place where we met, right? Boston, that was the place where we met. If you're talking about time, you say when. That was the time when we met, 2012. That's the time when we met, okay? If you're talking about a thing, you use which or that, with the one caveat, the one warning that if you have a comma, you're always going to use which, okay? You never use that after a comma. After a comma, use which. And a comma suggests that you're using a non-identifying or non-restrictive clause. It's like you're just providing more information about something, right? If it's a possession, right? This is my coffee, mine, that's possession, my coffee. Your coffee, that's a possessive pronoun, his coffee, all right? So if you're replacing his or her as a pronoun, say whose. That was the man whose dog was barking, all right? And then if you're talking about a person, we use who or that, okay? That was the guy that I told you about. Okay, great. So let's practice building some of these sentences with adjective clauses. Let me first start by giving you two sentences and see if you can combine them into a nice longer sentence using an adjective clause. So here are two sentences. Yesterday, I read a book, period, okay? The book was very inspiring, period. Okay, so those are two sentences, very short. Now, how do you combine them into a longer sentence using an adjective clause? Well, first you need to decide what is the main clause, that is like what is the main idea, and then second, what is the adjective clause? What is the descriptive clause? What is giving you more information about the book, okay? So yesterday I read a book, that's the main idea, so let's call that the main clause. The book was very inspiring. That's descriptive. I'm telling you more about the book, so that would be your adjective clause. Okay, so we combine these two sentences. Yesterday I read a book that was very inspiring, okay? The main clause is yesterday I read a book. That was very inspiring. That's the adjective clause because I'm describing the book. And by the way, is this an identifying clause or a non-identifying clause? This is an identifying clause, so there's no comma. So it's an identifying clause because I'm telling you about the identity of this book, okay? You see, a book, that's very general. So now I'm going to tell you about which book, the book that was very inspiring. Oh, okay, that book, you see, the book that was very inspiring. That's the nature of the book. That's the identity of the book. So it's an identifying clause, so there's no comma. Here's another practice exercise, okay? So please have a look at this slide and see if you can include the relative pronouns in the blank, okay? All right, let's look at the answers. The first one, the movie that I saw yesterday was surprisingly good, okay? This is an identifying clause, so I could say the movie that I saw or I could say the movie which I saw yesterday. Okay, you can use both. Okay, second example, the Spider-Man movie. Okay, now Spider-Man movie. I've already identified which movie I'm talking about. It's Spider-Man. That's as specific as I can get. I've already given you the identity of that movie. So your pronoun should be which, because it's a non-identifying or non-restrictive adjective clause. The Spider-Man movie, comma, which we saw last summer, comma, was excellent. So the main clause here is the Spider-Man movie was excellent. The adjective clause is which we saw last summer. And again, it's a non-identifying or non-restrictive clause, so use comma and which. Okay. Third example, the teacher who lives near New York always brings fresh examples to class, okay? The teacher who, your pronoun is who because you're talking about a person, okay? So the teacher who lives near New York. Now notice the teacher, I don't know which teacher. I did not give you his or her name. So this is an identifying clause. I'm telling you which teacher. The teacher, which teacher? The teacher who lives near New York. Oh, okay. Now I know. The one who lives near New York. All the other teachers live near Boston. So you're talking about the one who lives near New York. Say it's an online class. So the teacher who lives near New York. This is an identifying clause. There's no comma. So use who as your relative pronoun. Okay, next example, the movie that or which Chris recommended. Again, the movie, it's very general. It's very general. So this is an identifying clause. So you can use that or you can also use which. Okay, and there's no comma because it's a identifying clause because the movie is very general. Okay, the next one, the students whose projects were selected. We want to use the possessive pronoun whose, all right, because it's replacing his, her, or their, right? Their projects. Okay, you're talking about third person plural, so we use the possessive pronoun their, Their. All right, their projects. We're going to replace that with whose. The students whose projects, right? Their projects, whose projects were selected will present at the showcase next week, okay? And the last one, the cafe where we met last summer has finally reopened. When you're talking about location, use the pronoun where, right? That was the place where we met, the cafe where we met last summer. So talking about a location, use where. Let's do one more practice. Let's do a listening activity, okay? So please have a listen and just see if you can write down what you hear, and then let's talk about it, okay? So here is the story, okay?
Emily boarded the French Express 21 train, which would carry her across 3 countries, feeling the thrill of a journey that she had dreamed about for years. At the station, she met a photographer who loved capturing strangers' stories, and together they wandered through markets where vendors sang as they worked. Later, they hiked toward a cliff that overlooked a turquoise sea, stopping to rest beside a small cafe where travelers shared tales of places they missed. By sunset, Emily realized she had found a world that made her feel wonderfully alive.
All right, let's talk about this listening activity. Emily boarded the French Express 21 train, comma, which, okay? Do you notice Emily boarded the French Express 21 train? French Express 21 train. That's very specific, right? I just gave you the identification of that train. It's about as specific as you can get. So because it's specific, you want to use a comma after that because it's going to be a non-identifying or non-restrictive adjective clause. So comma, which. We don't say comma that if we're talking about a thing. Always comma which. Which would carry her across 3 countries, feeling the thrill of a journey that she had dreamed about for years. A journey that she had dreamed about for years. This is an identifying clause because a journey, it's very general. So a journey, which journey? The journey that she had dreamed about for years, you see? So that's an identifying clause. So there's no comma. You can use that or you can use which in this situation, but they happen to use that, okay? At the station, comma, she met a photographer who loved capturing strangers' stories. Okay, photographer, that's a person, so we're going to say who, relative pronoun. Who, it's a subject relative pronoun. She met a photographer who loved capturing strangers' stories, and together they wandered. Be careful when you hear wander. It's different from wonder, right? I wonder. Wonder is like, I'm curious. I wonder if it's going to rain today. I wonder if it's going to snow tomorrow, right? I wonder. That's just, I'm curious. I don't know the answer. I wonder. Wander is when you walk around sort of, exploring a place. place. Like you wander around a museum, you wander around Central Park in New York City, just kind of exploring. You're wandering. Together they wandered, and that is a common word. Good to know. They wandered, so they explored through markets where, so that's a location, so we use where. Vendors, that means people who sell things, sang as they worked. Later, they hiked towards a cliff that overlooked a turquoise sea. Turquoise is a beautiful color, a light blue, and then overlook is to have a view. Like, for example, San Francisco overlooks the bay, the San Francisco Bay. Paris, the Eiffel Tower, overlooks Paris. The Tokyo Tower overlooks Tokyo. So it's to look down, to look out at something, is to overlook. Overlooked a turquoise sea, stopping to rest beside a small cafe where travelers shared. Okay, it's not when, it's not which, it's where, because we're describing the location, okay? Something happened there, so we say where. Where travelers shared tales of places they missed. By sunset, Emily realized she had found a world that made her feel wonderfully alive. Okay, this is an identifying clause. There's no comma, so you could say Emily realized she had found a world which, or you can say that made her feel wonderfully alive. Okay, so I just want to talk for a minute about reducing adjective clauses to adjective phrases, because we hear this a lot in casual conversation. Casual conversation, it always reduces, right? It goes to like shorter, more efficient language, because when you're having a conversation with somebody, you don't want to waste time. You want to pack in a lot of information in very short sentences. So a lot of times native speakers will, instead of using adjective clauses, we use adjective phrases. It's faster, it's more efficient. What is the difference? An adjective clause has a subject and a verb. An adjective phrase does not include both a subject and a verb. For example, this sentence here, the dog who is barking belongs to me, right? The dog belongs to me. That's the main clause, okay? Who is barking? That is your adjective clause, right? It's adjective because it's descriptive. It's clause because it includes a subject and a verb. In this case, the subject is who. The verb is barking. Notice that's in the progressive tense, it's present progressive or present continuous. You can say the dog who is barking. But a lot of people in conversation don't say the dog who is barking belongs to me because it takes too much time. So instead we say the dog barking belongs to me. And that is an adjective phrase, okay? Now, how do you get from an adjective clause to an adjective phrase? If you're using the be verb, in other words, the present continuous, the present progressive, it's very simple. You remove the subject relative pronoun, who, in this case, who, and you also remove the to be verb, in this case, is, okay? So you reduce it to just the ing form of the verb. The dog barking belongs to me. In the native speaker, we understand what you're saying, the dog barking. You're talking about the dog that is barking or the dog who is barking. You don't have to say that is or who is. We just say the dog barking belongs to me. Okay, there's another really common reduction that we should talk about, and that is reducing adjective clauses in the passive voice to adjective phrases. All right, this is really common. So let's just spend a minute on this. If you look at the sentence, the book that was written by that author was amazing. What is the main clause in that sentence? The main clause is the book was amazing. That's the main clause, the main idea. The book was amazing, right? That's the main idea. That was written by that author, right? That is your adjective clause. That was written by that author, right? That's your adjective clause. And it's in the passive voice, was written. Okay, so how do you reduce an adjective clause to an adjective phrase in the passive voice? It's really simple. You just remove the relative pronoun that, and then you remove the to be verb, right? It could be is, it could be are, it could be was, it could be were. So you're left with, in this case, the book written by that author was amazing, because we're dropping that and we're dropping was. And all we're left with is the past participle, and then you have that little prepositional phrase, by that author. Okay, so the book written by that author was amazing. That's your adjective phrase. The adjective clause, the book that was written by that author was amazing. Both of these are fine. It's just that the adjective phrase is so much more common in everyday conversation. Remember, language always reduces to more efficient, faster communication in everyday casual conversation. So adjective phrases are good to know for speech, for casual conversation. All right, awesome. Okay, so that's a little bit on adjective clauses. Again, the function of the adjective clause is to combine short, choppy sentences into nice, longer, more flowing, more beautiful sentences. It just sounds more advanced. It sounds more pleasing when you use adjective clauses. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. This is Carl with Active English. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you guys later. Bye.